have you join us today. We're going to be starting a new series of vital signs with Graham. He's going to be talking about connecting with others.
About once a year nowadays when I go to the doctors, they want to do a whole series of blood tests. And every now and then a nurse will take me into another room and do a detailed checkup of my weight, my blood pressure, my physical activity, and now they're even doing memory checks. And I understand why they do this. They're looking for any vital signs that may bring about underlying issues that may be a problem. The good news is at church today we're going to look at your vital signs. And over the next 4 weeks we're going to look at some key vital signs for life. We're going to look at connecting with others today. Next week we're going to look at connecting with God. We're looking at connecting with the community and connecting with the church. And we'll do that over the next 4 weeks. Today, connecting with other people. It's a vital sign. Some years ago now, I had surgery in Wakefield Hospital. And a couple of days after the operation, I was walking down the corridor, you know, in those gowns that sort of reveal all. And coming the other way, there was another lady, and our eyes met, and we stopped for a moment. And she said to me, "What are you in here for?" So I told her, and then I said to her, "Well, what are you in here for?" And over the next minute or so, she told me that just a week before that, she'd been diagnosed with a brain tumour. And she was in hospital to have a biopsy to see how bad it was. And she finished by saying, "I get the results tomorrow. And if you hear me screaming, you know it's bad news." Then she was ready to move off, so off she went, and I did too. But I sort of felt God prompting me that this was more than sort of a coincidental meeting. So I made a mental note of where her room was. The next day I went for a few walks, but still didn't bump into her. And every time I walked past her room, I noticed the doors were shut. And then about lunchtime, I walked past her room and the door was open. So I just sort of stood in the doorway. And she saw me and she asked me to come in. And I said, "How did it go?" "Bad news," she said, and she just burst into tears. "It's malignant. I start radiotherapy and chemotherapy in the next few days." And I just stood there while she just cried and cried. And after a while, I asked her, I said, "Would you like me to pray for you?" And her response was one I've heard probably hundreds of times. "Look, I'm not the religious type, but I'd love that." So I prayed a short prayer for Susan. We talked for a few moments. I promised to keep on praying for her. And then I went back to my room. And I did keep praying for her. But as I reflected on that encounter, 2 things hit me. First, at various times in our lives, I think every person becomes open to the possibility that there is a God who might just care for them. We'll hear more about that next week. The second thing that hit me was that no matter how self-sufficient we might look or want to be, at various times in our lives we all need the support, the encouragement, and just the friendship of other people. To put it another way, at times we need vital connections. We need vital connections with God and with other people. And we're going to be looking at this over the next few weeks. Connecting with others. You know, way back in the very first book of the Bible, Genesis, we read that God created Adam and he put him in the Garden of Eden, which was a perfect place. But then a few verses later we read this: "The Lord said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." You see, God never meant anybody to be lonely. And so God created this wonderful thing called relationships. Vital connections. We were made to live life with other people. And the truth is, we feel life more fulfilling and we enjoy life more and a whole host of things when we do life with some other people. Now, in order to illustrate this, I want to look at three big figures in the Bible and look at their lives. And the first person I want to look at is a guy called Moses. You may remember Moses, who could just about do anything. He threw his staff down and it became a snake. He hit a rock and out came water. He turned the river Nile into blood. And best of all, and you've probably seen it in the movie, he parted the Red Sea. Moses and God, unbeatable combination. Incredible. Invincible. But do you notice the story in the Bible reading? Moses tells Joshua to go out and fight the Amalekites. And Moses says, I'm going to go up this hill with Aaron and Hur and the staff of God, and I'll pray for you. You do the fighting, I'll pray for you. And the text says that the battle went on and on. And Moses got tired. You see, every time Moses held his hands up, Joshua would win the battle. Every time his hands went down, he would start to lose. So Aaron and Hur got a stone and helped him sit on it. And it wasn't enough. And the text says, Aaron and Hur held up Moses' hands. And as they did that, the battle was won. Moses on his own wasn't enough. He needed Aaron and Hur to help him. You see, when we do life in connection with others, we achieve more. It's true in life, work, family, whatever you might think. When we do life in connection with others, we achieve more. The Bible in Ecclesiastes says these words, you are better off to have a friend than to be all alone. Because together you can work more effectively. We achieve more. The second of the characters I want to look in the Bible is a guy called Paul. And again, Paul and God seem to be an unbeatable team. Paul healed people. He cast out demons. He even raised people from the dead. I mean, you might think the messages at this church go on for a long time. But there's a story in Acts 20 when Paul was preaching and he went on and on and on and on. And there was a young guy there who fell asleep. But worse than that, the young guy was sitting in a window listening, and when he fell asleep, he fell out of the window onto the ground and he was dead. You could sort of say he was bored stiff. And you know what Paul did? He went over to him in the middle of the sermon and raised him from the dead. Now, I need to tell you, we don't do that at this church. So if you're going to doze off, find a comfortable seat that's a safe place and you just go your hardest. Paul, an incredible miracle worker. God and Paul, that's all he needed. But have you ever noticed how Paul's name goes with a lot of other people if you read the Bible? Paul and Barnabas, Paul and Timothy, Paul and Silas. There's an incident recorded in the book of Acts where Paul preaches in a town called Lystra. And he gets stoned and beaten up, and they drag him out of the city and leave him for dead. And you know what it says in the text? It's on the screen. But after the disciples gathered around him, he got up and went back into the city. I mean, Paul was powerful, capable, but he needed the disciples to gather around him. When we have vital connections with others, you see, we can overcome more. Life, work, home, wherever. When we live life in connection with others, we're able to cope with and overcome the inevitable difficulties that come our way. But Paul not only found that his connections would help him overcome them, Paul found that his connections with other people helped him to enjoy life more. I find it amazing that Paul seems to be always full of joy. In Acts 13, Paul and Barnabas get kicked out of the city. And it says in the text, the disciples were filled with joy. A few chapters later, Paul and Silas are beaten up and in prison, singing songs of praise to God and full of joy. You know too, when you live in vital connections with other people, you enjoy life more. You know, some years ago, Janice and I went away for a weekend with some friends. And on the weekend, it was on a Saturday night about 10 p.m. and somebody had the bright idea at 10 o'clock at night that it would be a good idea for us to, the four of us, to play some games together. And somebody said, why don't each of us choose a game and we'll play that for a short time and then we can sort of all go to bed. We thought, great. So Janice chose a game of cards. We played that for about 45 minutes. My friend's wife chose Scrabble. We played that for 45 minutes. I chose a game of cards, 45 minutes. Now it was about 1:30. And we had my friend to choose a game. And we said, okay, what are you going to choose? And he uttered a word that I never want to hear for the rest of my life. Yes, he said the word Monopoly. And I said, do you know how long it takes to play Monopoly? He said, that's my choice. So for the next 4 hours, we played Monopoly and got to bed at 6 a.m. We all felt dreadful, but I'll tell you, it was such a blast. It was such a night of fun and laughter, and we still laugh about it. When you have vital connections with other people, you actually enjoy life more. Vital connections helped Moses achieve more. Vital connections for Paul helped him to overcome more and enjoy life more. And the last person I want to look at is Jesus himself. Now, Jesus was God in the flesh. I mean, if anybody could have said, I don't need anybody else, it was Jesus. He could preach the best sermons, heal people all over the place, raise people from the dead, teach people. He didn't need anyone. He was God in the flesh. But you notice it says in Mark chapter 3, Jesus appointed 12 that they might be with him. He saw the need for a connection with others. He appointed 12 disciples. And over 3 years he spent huge amounts of time with the disciples, eating with them, teaching them, travelling with them, weeping with them, laughing with them, praying with them, resting with him. The 12 were Jesus. And on his very last days on earth, when he was going to face betrayal and a horrible death on the cross, he took those 12 disciples into the Garden of Gethsemane to be with him. And then he took 3 of those disciples a bit further on and he says, wait here and pray while I go on. Now the reality is the disciples weren't with Jesus, they all fell asleep. There's a lot of people falling asleep in this message. Not here, but in the message. But I think Jesus wanted to be surrounded by friends, not so that they could help him, so that they could just be there for him. Vital connections help us achieve more, overcome more, enjoy life more, and face more. It's true in life, at work, you can face and overcome more and more when you're with other people. Vital connections. Now, we all connect with people at work and maybe people at church, people in the community, but a lot of the time our connections with people are on a surface level. We know their name and a few things about them, but that's about all. I'm talking about vital connections. So with the time I have left, I want to try and explain to you what vital connections are, and then give you a couple of suggestions how to make some vital connections. What are vital connections? Well, Gordon MacDonald, in a great book called The Resilient Life, gives the following definition, and you need to brace yourself for this. Vital connections are ultimately defined as the people we know whose death would leave us truly devastated. And these are the people who would be truly devastated if we died. The people who, if something happened to us, they would be at our funeral, not just out of respect, because they miss us so much. And if something happened to them, we would be at their funeral, not just out of respect, or because it's a done thing, not as a spectator, because we're deeply moved. These are people who really know us, because we open up and tell them what's really going on in our lives. These are people we love being with, and they love being with us. These are the few people we can have a good laugh with and a good cry with. These are the people we get encouragement from and who encourage us. These are the people whose death would leave you truly devastated and would be truly devastated if you died. And I don't want to be all morbid about this, but just think for a moment about your funeral. Hopefully there'll be a bit of a crowd. Can you identify some friends, some vital connections, people who would be there? You know, a careful study of the Bible says the Bible is about relationships. Makes it very clear we need a relationship with God, because God is the only one who can forgive our past, help us in the present, and give us an eternal hope for the future. But we also need vital connections with a few other people. Can I encourage you as strongly as I can to think about your vital connections and to do what you need to do? Do you have people in your life and they know you so well and love you so much they'd be truly devastated if you died? And you have people that you know and love and care for that you'd be truly devastated if they died? To help with this, I'll put a few questions. Who listens to me, supports and encourages me? Who shares my tears? Who laughs with me? Who keeps me on track spiritually? Who provides me with wise counsel? Have you got some people in your life like that? So I want to finish by giving you a few thoughts about how to make these vital connections. And the first thing I want to say is this: making vital connections actually takes time and is not that easy. It doesn't just happen. Building deep friendships takes time, effort, patience and risk. And sometimes there's hurt and disappointment along the way. I mean, there are no shortcuts to making vital connections with others. You just have to take a step and reach out and do the relationship building. And eventually the rewards come and you develop those vital connections that are so life-fulfilling. But sometimes, usually, in fact, you have to go through a long process. Second thing I want to say is the church is an ideal place to begin making vital connections. To start those conversations and that relationship building. And let me correct any misconceptions you may have about the church. The church isn't made up of perfect people. People who have it all together. People who never face any issues. The church is made up of ordinary people like you and me with all the issues that we face in life. But these people are discovering that there is a God who wants to be involved in their life in a personal way. A God who sent Jesus to die for them, to give them a new life. And through getting to know God through Jesus, they're getting to know themselves better and they're starting to build relationships and vital connections with others. The church is a great place to build vital connections. Let me also say this though. If you just come to this church and afterwards, when we finish, you make a beeline for your car and you never talk to anybody, you'll never make any vital connections here. Let me give you a few quick suggestions before I finish. Do you want to make some vital connections? Talk to people after church. Don't wait on your own until somebody comes up to you. You go up to somebody. Hi, and talk to them. You take the first step. If you see somebody on their own, go and have a chat to them. Secondly, meet somebody midweek. Say to somebody, hey, would you like to meet this week for coffee or morning tea or a catch-up? Is it risky? Of course it is. The friendship may not develop. The person you invite might be a real pain. I've got a list of people I wouldn't invite. I can give them to you afterwards if you like. You know, it's just free. But I'll tell you this. The rewards of trying are incredible. Meaningful, deep friendships. Thirdly, join one of the church's smaller groups. We have lots of smaller groups that meet at the church. Men's groups, women's groups, mums and grandies groups, Bible study groups and so on. And you might think, I don't want to join one of those churchy groups, I might be embarrassed. I hardly know anything about the Bible and they might ask me to spill out my guts and I don't want to do that to everybody. Let me assure you, the groups at this church are to encourage and help you. We have some groups that study the Bible, and personally, I think we should all be in a group where we actually get with a few people and we learn more about our faith and ask questions together. But there are other groups that are focused on the relationship side and support side. Can I encourage you to join one of the smaller groups? Have a look in the fortnightly email or the website or talk to one of the leaders. The final way I want to mention is find a place to serve in the church. A great way to make connections and build relationships is to say, I'll serve on the coffee or on the set up and pack up or whatever. When you work shoulder to shoulder with somebody, you get to know them better. And people build great relationships by serving together. Well, my time is up. Do you remember the lady Susan I mentioned at the beginning? The lady with the brain tumour? I met her there in hospital, in Wakefield Hospital. You know, I did keep praying for her. And then a couple of months afterwards, I began wondering, I wonder what's happened to Susan. I decided to try and track her down. And all I knew was her full name and that she lived in Dernancourt. Now, this was before all the sophistication of AI and all that sort of stuff. So I went to a thing called the White Pages. Now, most of you don't know what that is. Let me explain. It's a list of people with their names, their address, and their phone number. I went there and there were 5 people with the name S and her surname living in Dernancourt. And I didn't really fancy ringing up all 5 and looking like a complete moron. So then I got a copy of their electoral roll. And I matched that. And I found there was only one Susan with her surname in Dernancourt. Then I went back to the White Pages and I found the phone number. So I rang her up. And a lady answered the phone, and thank goodness she said, "Hello, Susan speaking." And I said, "Look, my name's Graham Humphreys. This may seem a bit odd, but I'm trying to catch up and contact a lady who had surgery in Wakefield Hospital about 7 weeks ago." And she said, "That's me." And I said, "Look, you probably don't remember." And she said, "I do remember you." And I said, "How are you going?" Well, she said she was going pretty well. She'd finished the first round of radio and chemotherapy. She was heading off to Alice Springs for a holiday and then going to the USA for her son's wedding. And then she said this: "I've received fantastic support from my husband and been overwhelmed by the support of my friends." She had vital connections, which sustained her incredibly. Now, you may never face anything like Susan. I hope and pray you don't. But I hope and pray that you'll take the time and make the effort to develop some close, vital connections in your life, which will help you achieve more, overcome more, enjoy life more, and face whatever life brings. Please do whatever you need to do to develop some vital connections. That's why we were created. Please work on your vital connection with God, because God is waiting for you to come home to Him today. And please make some vital connections with other people. Then you will enjoy what the Bible calls life to the full, because that's why we were created. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you that you're concerned about our relational world. Thank you most of all that you're a God who wants a relationship with us, and that's why you sent Jesus. And I pray that every person in this room would begin a journey today of coming to know you, God, in a personal way as their loving Father, forgiving them, helping them, and giving them a new hope. But I pray right now, especially for people here who feel they don't have any good friends or vital relationships. People feeling alone and isolated. Come, God, with your comfort and love. Help them to sense now how much you love them, are with them, and are there for them. And please come by your Spirit. Give each one of us the courage we need to ask ourselves questions about vital connections, and give us courage to take the steps we need. And in time, I pray that every person in this place would discover the joys of having good friends and deep, meaningful, vital connections. I thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Well, thank you, Graham, for that. We just love the reminder that we are supposed to be here in community. So I encourage you, if you're by yourself at the moment, send someone a text, connect in with them, and we'll see you next week.